All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, we are at part 4 of the final months of Bruce Lee. Lots of gems, lots of George Lazenby, lots of Gray. Are you inflating what we take in just to give to the triads? Let's get to it.
And every day, I practice martial arts.
Watch out!
Yo, Dre, how you doing, man?
Sifu, I am great.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm doing well, man. So here we are for part 4 of what I thought was going to be a 1-part series. Wait, is it even a series if it's only 1 part?
I think it's become a series.
Yeah, we had the idea to talk about the final months of Bruce Lee.
It's
Basically,
It's like the Rocky movies. He only, wrote the first one thinking like, we'll see what happens.
right.
Yeah.
And yeah, then ended up making one of the greatest franchises in American cinema history, right? Yeah, it's always great to rewatch Rocky in the eyes of someone, with someone who has never seen it before, right? Yeah.
Yeah, to
And,
see
you
the
know,
reactions.
Yeah, I'm not crying, you're crying.
No.
Right, so anyway.
I've
yeah.
shed too many tears already.
So here we are in part 4. Originally had gotten this awesome timeline through this blog Pop Cult Master, which is lots of great information. There's some questionable stuff in there,
Some
lots
good
of
tidbits.
interjections, and
Yeah.
but there is, the timeline is legit, and I put it together with the drug letters and a few other things to kind of make a pretty comprehensive timeline of Bruce Lee's final 7 months, basically the year of 73.
Okay, which is today would be the 51st anniversary.
Yeah, so
as we're recording this.
As
right
we're
now.
recording
Right.
this. So obviously by the time this comes out, this will sound kind of weird, but it happened to be a total coincidence
Yeah.
that we are
Yeah.
recording what should be the last of this. I mean, we never know with me, right? Because I can spend an hour talking about one thing in here and then it'll be 5 parts. But today is July 20th.
That is-
2024. That's the date of this recording. Certainly not the date this episode's going to come out. Not the way Andrew works. But in any case, it is the 51st anniversary of
Bruce Lee's
death.
untimely death. Yes, please.
Were you going to say something, Mikey?
I was, but the moment has passed.
Timing is
So,
everything.
we left off on Saturday, July 14th,
Mhm.
with the so-called bowling anecdote by Jackie Chan. And I also talked about how there are always issues when we kind of remember these kind of stories. And that always needs to be understood. As accurate as this timeline could be, we are still, it's still, some of it comes from firsthand stuff like newspaper articles that tell us what was going on. A lot of it comes through secondhand accounts, and some of it comes through accounts that have been maybe reworked and changed over time. So, we cannot be responsible for the 100% accuracy, or I cannot claim that this is 100% accurate, right? And before we get started, just a reminder that the best way to support us is on Patreon, patreon.com/The Kung Fu Genius. For as little as $5 a month, you can get access to episodes a few days early, and higher levels of support get all sorts of goodies. It's the only way to get your questions answered on our various Ask Me Anything episodes. And if you don't want to support us on Patreon, you can support us here on YouTube through our various YouTube memberships. Check that out below. And there you go. So here we go, Dre. So like I said,
Here we go.
we left off at on July 14th, things like, here's the ticker, right? Getting to July 20th, right? And so, now we are at Monday, July 16th, right? So here we go. Lee makes a $200 phone call to Unicorn Chan, Siu Keilun, because the latter couldn't be contacted in person due to working on a film in Manila called The Unwanted. Hong Kong and Philippines share the same time zone. Lee tells Unicorn that he is getting headaches. After Lee's death, Unicorn denies this because he could not be seen by Star C to be in cahoots with Lee, who he has known since childhood, following the previous announcement of the impending lawsuit. The flip side to the denial is that he can't be interrogated about a topic which he ostensibly has no awareness of. According to a 1978 Hong Kong book called The Fighting Spirit, Lee told Unicorn that he intended to go to America in 10 days' time so that he could get a detailed medical check.
Wait, so
yes.
a $200 phone call. What, he called the Philippines?
Yeah, I mean, well,
From
Hong Kong. Yeah. Well, think I
Ah.
don't know. I don't know if you remember. I mean, you're an old dirty bastard like me.
Yeah.
Do you remember, like, even if you were calling like outside of your county
Yeah.
back in the day, that was like a long distance call. And then if you called another
Yes.
state, and then if you
Oh,
called
yeah.
like another country, I remember like it was such a big deal. You know, like nowadays we don't, like, if I want to talk to any of my European peeps,
You
you know,
just WhatsApp it.
you go on WhatsApp and you call, right?
Right.
there you go, right? But
Thank
like
you,
back
WhatsApp.
in the day, long distance, that was
Yeah.
expensive,
Oh,
man. And that was like a major deal. You had to like
Wow.
really look at the clock and like, make those calls.
and what's cool is they
meaningful.
keep those records,
Yes.
and
That's not cool if you're like calling 0898 numbers.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Whoa.
Or
Like-
Alyssa Milano's Teen Steam line.
whoa,
All right.
wow.
I wish I'd known about that when I was younger.
Wow.
Yeah, remember during the 80s, they would have those commercials where you could like call the celebrities. Obviously, it was always like recordings. I remember Alyssa Milano had one called Teen Steam.
Nah, I've never
Yeah.
seen it.
Yeah,
It's
that
a
was like a big
Milano
deal.
one.
Yeah.
That's new
It's
to
like,
me.
oh, it's the girl from Big Boss.
Yeah.
No, not Big Boss. Who's
No.
the boss?
Who's the boss?
Big Boss. I've been watching too many Bruce Lee
It's
movies.
the girl from
Jeez.
Commando. How dare-
Commando. How about Commando?
Yeah,
No.
right?
Commando.
It's the girl. Oh, sorry, it's the girl from Commando.
Yeah, that's right.
Commando.
Yeah, we always have to remind them what happened
Right.
during the Revolutionary War. All right.
Oh,
There's a reason we don't have that accent anymore. We fought for the right not to have
not
that
to
accent.
have it.
We're not going to get
Yeah.
into that.
Speak. And I tell you what, if American English is good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for me.
That's
All right,
right.
so
That's right.
here we go. By the way, what this also alludes to here is, Bruce Lee was suing that Star C, the Singhoi
Mhm.
film company, whom his childhood friend Unicorn
Unicorn.
Chan made that movie for, Fist of the Unicorn. And then they used footage of Bruce while he was on the set to make it seem like Bruce was in the movie.
Right.
And of course, this caused a lot of rumors that there was like a big split between Unicorn and Bruce Lee.
Mhm.
All right. And, that the two of them weren't cool towards the end of Bruce Lee's life. But it seems that that wasn't true. I mean, obviously, he had a $200 telephone call to Unicorn
Oh, yeah.
just 4 days before he died. It was really a beef because he was suing the company that distributed Unicorn's film.
Yeah.
So I think that they could not be seen together because it would look like kind of like
Hey.
the two people are kind of in cahoots with
Right.
each other, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's totally understandable. By the way, I have it on good authority, although that doesn't mean that it's absolutely true, that Betty used to date Unicorn. And then Betty kind of, after she saw Bruce was like, I like her.
Oh.
And she went over to Bruce. And so, but apparently, but I don't know if it's true, but I heard it from a pretty good source. Someone who may have in fact heard it from Betty herself,
Mhm.
that she used to date Unicorn. But whether it's true or not, whatever. But it's one of those things, but not substantiated. All right. So he Bruce talks to him, talks about having these headaches. It makes sense given what happened on May 10th,
Mhm.
and even dragging the Bruce Lee story, which is not entirely faithful to the actual story of Bruce Lee, but does have some things in there.
Some
Like
truths.
they got his name right.
Got
Towards
his name right.
towards the end of the movie, like before he passes away, even the Bruce Lee, played by Jason Scott Lee, is
Yeah,
like complaining about
yeah.
headaches and stuff like that. So that could be something. It would make sense. I mean, I don't have any reason to doubt Unicorn saying that, but maybe at the time he didn't want to talk because of the pending lawsuits and so on and so forth. The next paragraph, which is still on Monday, July 16th, Ron Van Cleef, good friend of mine.
Oh, yeah.
Was
Has
working.
he been on the show yet?
He hasn't. A lot of people want me to interview him. I should do it. It's almost like for whatever reason, I almost like getting people that I've never talked to before, like Professor Peter Lorge, or
Right.
we had Richard Norton, who I'd never met before. Getting people that like it's like, oh, this is my chance to talk to him because I can leverage our amazingly large audience reach of the podcast to get bigger guests, and then like people that I know because I have lots of friends
That
in the martial arts world who are
That
very
is
well
right.
established, but I'm like kind of like Yeah, I know those guys. I want to
Uh.
try to get the guys that I don't know, but yeah, it's kind of stupid. We haven't had Ron on yet. Yeah,
We got to speak to the producer about that.
yeah, we got to speak to the producer.
Get him on it.
Yes, were you gonna say something, producer?
I was, but the moment passed.
Jesus Christ. What are we gonna call you, Clem Fandango, or what's your name?
Hello. This is Clem Fandango. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? This is Clem. Hello, Alex. This is Clem Fandango.
There we go.
It's Clem Fandango.
Are you a Wing Chun instructor that needs some extra guidance in your own training? My private online Wing Chun training offers a multitude of benefits for instructors. Here are some of those benefits. 1, access to expert guidance, namely me. With my experience teaching instructors from all over the world, I can create a program just for you, whether it's the details of the advanced Wing Chun, something more fundamental, or just to help you create a program for your own students. 2, flexible learning. The training can be worked around your schedule and what's most convenient for you. I don't charge extra if you bring a training partner to do the lesson with you, so bring that partner and you can get more benefit, and I can teach the two of you how to train together. 3, comprehensive curriculum. Whether you want to teach in a more traditional way or you want to upgrade your material to a more modern style, I can help you create the perfect program for your students and for yourself. And 4, personalized coaching. This program will be exactly what you're interested in without any fluff or blah, blah, blah to run things out. We get right to it, and I want you to be happy with the improvements to your training and to the curriculum. Don't miss out on these incredible benefits. Enroll in online Wing Chun private training with me and take your Wing Chun skills to the next level. Use the code KFG online to get a 15% discount on monthly subscriptions for either 2 or 4 lessons a month. This offer will last until July 30th, 2024, or until my schedule gets totally booked. Use the link in the description below. Don't forget to use the code KFG online to get that 15% discount on the subscription of your choice as soon as possible. And I will see you online. So anyway, Ron Van Cleef was working in the Philippines when Unicorn told him that Bruce died. This must have been Tough Guy, aka the Black Dragon. When Bruce was alive, Ron had met 3 of the workers at Golden Harvest: Raymond Chow, Andre Morgan, and Carter Wong. Ron claimed that the last time he spoke to Bruce was in June, when he noticed that Bruce seemed a little thin. This would be great. We can actually talk to Ron and be like,
Wow.
because, you know, we can go like, hey, Ron, they wrote this about you. Did you actually say that? You know what I mean? And we can like verify, right? A month later, it was Unicorn who told Ron that Bruce had died. In the May 30, 1983 issue of People magazine, William Chung claimed that he had gotten a phone call from Bruce on July 16th because he had reached some decisions about his career, which were going to upset a lot of people. Wanting to bring many Hong Kong stuntmen with him to Hollywood would appear to be one of them. William said, "You must understand that Bruce's change of plans and that America trip meant that some people would have been ruined if he lived. Millions of dollars were involved." Sounds a little conspiratorial.
It is
like,
a little.
Bruce, and I've heard this before, that Bruce had, wanted to bring the core stuntmen that he had with him. Because think about it, he had people like Yun-Hua who could do the acrobatics for him, looked physically very similar to him. You had people like
You had an entourage.
You had Yun Bu, you had Jackie Chan, you had Lam Cheng Ying,
Okay.
Sammo Hung.
Yeah.
And to bring those guys to the States, can you imagine in that alternate universe if Bruce had survived and then he had come to the States to make films, but he brings Jackie and Sammo and Lam Cheng Ying and those guys with him in the early 70s.
Yeah.
That's really interesting because think about it, the Hong Kong style action cinema really didn't break into the US until, well, one, Rumble in the Bronx came out, because that was the first time they let Jackie Chan be Jackie Chan,
Right.
which was actually because Rumble in the Bronx is not in
Vancouver,
America. Rumble in Vancouver, Canada. Rumble in the Bronx is not Rumble in the Bronx is not like Rush Hour or Shanghai Noon, which were American produced films. Rumble in the Bronx is a Hong Kong produced film. They just brought it over here. So I think that was the smart decision, because instead of Jackie coming to the States like he did with The Protector, like he did with Big Brawl, and then his hands were tied because he couldn't do the stunts because of all the American insurance laws and regulations, he just made a Hong Kong style film the way he had been doing for years, and then just showed it in America. I'm like, this is what I can do.
Right.
Especially when he's unencumbered by, slow American stuntmen. And at that time, I mean, stunt fighters in America are quite different now than they were back then. And so it would be interesting because that didn't come until the mid 90s. Can you
Wow.
imagine in an alternate universe where Bruce had survived, he came back to Hollywood, but he came with those guys like Jackie and Samo and Lam Ching in the early 70s, what they would have been able to do? It doesn't mean that what they would have done is better or whatever, but imagine they had a chance to showcase what they could do. They might have started coming up with some of the stuff that they did in Project A and Police Story
A lot earlier. Yeah.
But of course, American cinema was somewhat tied by American insurance companies, right? Like not letting the stunts be done by the main actors. So, maybe he would have to have relied heavily on those guys.
Yeah, but like, I mean, this stuff has a tendency to come. It gets worse as time wears on. So in the 70s, they might have had freer hands because the insurance may not have been
you're
quite
right.
as
Yeah,
crazy.
and it was early 70s.
Yeah. But then, here's William Chung supposedly saying in People magazine, by the way, that says it's People magazine, May 30th, 1983 issue. I think I'm going to go online and get a PDF of that because I would like to read William Chung quoted in People magazine, right? That, it sounds conspiratorial, right? So, okay, to be honest, stuntmen at that time were a dime a dozen in Hong Kong. And if Raymond had lost Jackie and Samo and a few guys, yeah, I mean, we know now what big stars they were, but Jackie wasn't a star in 73. Samo wasn't really a star in 73. They were starting to put him in stuff. Yun Bu was very green, right? Lam Ching Ying was a
wasn't
stunt guy.
about till the 80s that they started to make a name.
Jackie really came out in the late. Jackie and Samo really started to make a name for themselves in the late 70s.
Okay.
Lam Ching Ying, probably people didn't really notice who he was until Prodigal Son, which was early 80s, and then Mr. Vampire, and those films, and then unfortunately he didn't really become as big of a star as I think he should be. Then Lam Ching Ying, he was very, very underrated, and I think all the stuntmen in Hong Kong really respect Lam Ching Ying the most. And I remember it was one of the first celebrities that I cried when he passed away. When Lam Ching Ying passed away in the mid to late 90s, I believe. I remember I was totally broken. Yeah, because I just loved him. So anyway, this conspiracy stuff, and also what we always have to be mindful of is, okay, here William, and of course it's going to sound weird because it's always going to be like, yo, KFG, what are you salty about William Chung always, right? It just happens to be William Chung saying this. The fact that someone said a conspiracy theory in a magazine doesn't now mean that it's true, okay? Because it's always the problem is the plural of anecdotes is not data. The fact that someone said something again and again and again, the fact that, it was in a magazine. What the fuck does People magazine know about the film industry in Hong Kong? They're like, this guy, they're just going to print whatever, right?
I mean, they're the experts on it.
Yeah, I mean, People magazine is 2 steps above the National Enquirer, right? So it's not like they're going to vet everything. We need to send someone to Hong Kong and make sure that what this William Chung guy is saying is absolutely true. And think about it, at that time, the whole mysticism behind anything Asian was at an all-time high. So he's like, well, the ninjas run the triads, and they would run an article on that, at that time,
ninjas.
Right? Yeah, I mean, you just, there's always some, Big Jack from the Bronx. I'll tell you, I know how Bruce Lee died. You know that guy in the 70s, he used to wear the kung fu jacket, he got in Chinatown. Yeah, I'll tell you how Bruce Lee died. It was them ninjas. It was them ninjas they poisoned him. I'll tell you, I know. My cousin Jimmy did karate down there, in Brooklyn.
Karate Joe.
And his sensei told him, right?
Yeah.
Ninja, please.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we always have to be mindful. Millions of dollars were involved that they were going to lose a handful of stuntmen, which they could easily replace. Another person who claimed to have spoken to Bruce 4 days before he died was a director named Ulysses Ao Yeung Chun, who directed Chan Wai Mun, your boy, in Freedom Strikes a Blow, a March 73 release, which Jackie worked as a choreographer.
Wow.
Ulysses is also known as, here it says Tsai Yang Ming, looks like his in Cantonese would be Choi Yang Ming. As for the Bruce connection, Ulysses claimed that he spoke to him while working at Shaw Brothers Film Studios. Ulysses claimed that Bruce's death made him think about the stories behind everyone, especially gangsters and criminals. In the autumn of 1973, Ulysses directed Bruce's friend Bob Baker in Taiwan for a Taekwondo movie called Valley of the Double Dragon. Wow, a Bob Baker film. All right. cocaine fueled Bob Baker fan. Yeah, I mean, again, it's understandable why this kind of narrative always pops up about the triads. Chan Wai-mun himself, your boy, aka Michael Chan,
Man.
aka one of the baddest men on the planet.
Man.
I think Chan Wai-mun is one of those guys, like if I had a chance to meet him in Hong Kong, I'd be legit nervous.
Yeah.
You know, like I've met all sorts of people. I've met Jackie Chan, I met Sammo Hung, I met Lo Mong,
Yeah.
Lok Fong from Venoms, a lot of these guys, right? Mars, you know, we met Mars last year. He's
Okay.
famous Jackie Chan stunt guy. But there's something about Chan Wai-mun, because Chan Wai-mun was not just like a badass actor. Chan Wai-mun was actually a triad.
Yeah.
And most likely still is.
Yeah.
And he's got that raspy gangster voice, but in Cantonese.
Great.
And I would just be like, I would probably wouldn't be able to spit out one
Stumbling.
word in Chinese if I met him. But Chan Wai-mun, who was a triad member, was actually the reason why he got kicked off the police force and then later decided to become an
Right.
actor, was said and went on the record as saying that the triads wouldn't have messed with Bruce Lee. And that's an actual triad guy saying that. Okay. Chan Wai-mun, by the way, was also a friend of Bruce Lee. So we don't have any reason to believe he would have been a triad that wanted Bruce Lee dead. And then,
Right.
of course, would
No.
have said that, right?
No, he probably would have been like, nah, you're not
Yeah.
touching him.
So, by the way, a shout out to these awesome Hong Kong Chinese names, Ulysses, Ao
I know.
Yang, right?
This is a new name for me.
Yeah, by the way, Ao Yang,
Yeah.
you notice that most Chinese surnames are one character, like Leung or Wong, right? But there are a few Chinese surnames that are actually like two character names, like Ao Yang is one of them.
Okay.
Very rare, like to have like a two-part surname, right? But what's always interesting is the Western names that a lot of Hong Kong Chinese pick for themselves.
Ulysses.
If you've ever gone to
I wonder
Hong
where he
Kong,
got that one.
well, if you've ever gone to Hong Kong,
Right.
Hong Kong, obviously the British colony for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Many educated Hong Kong Chinese speak English very well, and have a Chinese name, and then decide to adopt a Western name. And sometimes they take something simple, Michael Wong, right? But one thing that's really interesting is a lot of Hong Kong Chinese will sometimes take a Western first name that is actually a last name in English. So that's why you'll see like Jackson Lee.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Jackson is normally a surname. It's not a given name, right? Or in the case of the great late Wing Chun master Hawkins Chung,
Yes.
Hawkins is really a surname,
Right.
but in his case, it's actually an Anglicization. Did I say you're Mikey? You're the
Yeah.
Brit. Anglicization.
Anglicization.
Is that a word?
Anglicization.
I mean,
Anglification.
I mean, you could just take
Anglicized version.
You can anglicize.
Okay,
that's what I'm saying.
anglicized version of his Chinese name, because his name is Zhang, same like William Zhang. Hawkin is his Chinese name, so he made Hawkins as English name.
Wow.
So although it actually is a surname, but
He did
Hawkins comes
anglicize that.
comes because it actually sounds like the same thing. Like one of my great Wing Chun mentors, Carson Lau. All right, Carson is his Western name, right? But his Chinese name of the surname is always first, so it's Lao comes first. Ga Sun is his Chinese name. So Ga Sun, Carson, perfect, right?
Wow.
So sometimes, not all the time, the Chinese name could be made to have some kind of English equivalent. So
Love
that's
it.
why you'll get like the Carsons and the Hawkins,
Mm.
and even Jackson. Jackson could be like a Chinese, and so you'll get Jackson Wong, for example, right?
Okay.
But then there's a whole, so you have like the Michael Wongs and the Freddie Lees, right? And then you have like the Jacksons and the Carsons and the Hawkins, which is probably some anglicized version of their name. And then you get people that are like, no, I'm Silver Fox Wong. All right. There's a guy at one of my, in Hong Kong, one of my Sibak, one of my Kung Fu uncle. His surname is Guan, like Quan, and his Western name is Graphite. All right, and I remember like just hearing, or like also like you have women named Queenie, like Queenie Wong, Queenie Leung, right? And you're like, what? Like, what kind of name is this? And sometimes I'll ask them, right? Like what's the deal with his name?
Yeah.
and they're like, well, they just want something that stands out because names like Michael and Alex and Mikey and Dre are just too
It's
boring.
yeah.
So
yeah.
they need to have something that like stands
Queenie.
out. Yeah. And you'll see that in Hong Kong, like when you look at advertisements, especially for tutors, because like tutors, so that you can get into like a better school, place, you know, well on tests. Tutors have like billboards because that's like a huge business over there to tutor people to pass those tests. And when you look on there and you look at their name, they have like crazy names, like the wildest stuff, like T-shirt Lee or whatever, like you just stuff that doesn't make any sense, right? So anyway, Ulysses. Yeah. I remember there was, I believe, a student of the late Moyat.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember reading in the genealogy of the Wing Chun family, where it had the list of all the students and all of Yip Man and all their students and so on and so forth. I believe there was a student of Moyat named Ebenezer Shum. Ebenezer, like Ebenezer Scrooge. And it's just, but to a certain degree, like, why would they take such kind of a, I guess what we would call a low percentage name? Because it's unique.
It is.
Because the Michaels and the
is.
Johns are just like too normal for them,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Ulysses
So here we
is
got
great. I love it.
Ulysses Ao Young, right? What
Yeah.
a cool name,
I
right?
love that name.
Also, Bruce Lee's doctor, one of his doctors, the one who did the sweat glands operation.
Yeah.
His surname was Ao, which could also be Ao Young, but maybe he shortened it. And he was Otto, O-T-T-O, like the German name, Otto.
Oh,
Otto Ao. Otto Ao,
yeah.
right? What a crazy name, right? Anyway, enough about
Dr.
Chinese names.
Otto Ao.
So, all right. So now here we go to Tuesday, July 17th. When Wong Ngok Chong sees Lee at Golden Harvest Studios, he decides to walk away, but Lee sees and engages him in conversation. I don't know if you remember, we talked about in the last episode, Wong Ok Chong is the guy that Bruce pulled the knife on at Golden Harvest Studios. So at this point, we have confirmation he's pulled his famous belt buckle pen knife on two people, Lo Wei and this Wong Ok Chong. So here on Tuesday, July 17th, Wong Ok Chong sees Lee at Golden Harvest Studios.
He tries to pull the
oh, I think I forgot something over here, right?
Right.
After a while of chatting, Lee tells him that some people in Hong Kong are not friendly with him. Can you imagine? It's like, and Wong is like, oh, people are not nice to you? Oh, okay. Yeah. It's like, you pulled a knife on me last week.
Right.
So think about this. Lee pulled a knife on this dude like a week ago, right?
Yeah.
When was that?
And he runs upon
Wong
him.
Ok Chong. That was July 12th.
Yeah.
It's July 7th. So 5 days, not even a full week.
Right.
And
It's
Bruce
still
is like,
fresh.
yeah,
Still
Bruce,
fresh
still
in my
fresh,
man's
still fresh.
man.
He's like he's doing that, like, his eyes are wide open. He's just turning around like he pretend he didn't see him. Like,
Right.
oh man, I forgot my keys in my car, right?
My pen.
And then Bruce is like, yeah, it's like some people are just not being friendly to me, right? He's like, yes.
I wonder why.
And
I
you can
wonder why.
imagine he's like scared
Yeah,
shitless, right?
Okay.
Wong doesn't understand who he's referring to.
Oh.
Right, because he's scared shitless. He
Yeah.
doesn't understand, like, what
He doesn't
does he
understand
remember
what's
what
happening.
happened 5 days ago?
Yeah.
Afterwards, Lee declares that he will return to Seattle. That's one thing about Seattle. Once you leave, who the hell wants to go back to Seattle?
Oh no.
He
Oh,
confided in the
damn.
wrong man. This was the same day that Lee was supposed to have got Ray to sign George Lazenby to Golden Harvest. In reality, Ray, man, I hate how this podcast calls Raymond Chow Ray. Ray was the one who anointed. Ray was the one who anointed Lazenby for the press to announce as Golden Harvest's Golden Boy. I find it to be dubious that there has never been a single photo of the two stars to highlight such a momentous occasion. Yeah, it's a little weird. Much has been discussed about George Lazenby, becoming part of Golden Harvest at that time.
Mhm.
As we discussed in previous episodes, he had kind of blown his chance after being in a relatively successful Bond film as a complete newcomer with no acting credentials, basically a model.
Yeah.
And they were like, here, you play Bond. And it was relatively successful.
Well, the funny thing is that amongst hardcore Bond fans, it's seen as like actually like a lot of Bond fans is their favorite. They think it's like got the best storyline because obviously at the end, spoiler alert, like Bond gets married and to Dinah Rigg and Blofeld kills her and it's like a whole thing and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
But there was more emotion out of a plank of wood than him because he was not an actor.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
So it's
yes.
like kind of like, and I've read plenty of interviews with him since, because he's sort of he's just been doing the circuit ever since then.
Yes,
Because
yes,
he
yes.
just never got.
He's that
anywhere.
guy that did that one thing once.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he's
Like Dean Cain.
Yeah, absolutely. But like like he said one of the things he said he said right from the beginning, it's just like when they interviewed him, or like they were like kind of auditioning for the job, they're like, so how's your body? And he goes, well, it's better than Connery's. And that was like his opening line. So already he's like
he's not making any friends.
No, he's like lining himself up
Yeah.
to be like that. And he said, so he looked back and he was just like, the first mistake, and he just had this real attitude about the whole thing. And then they didn't invite him back because he basically screwed it up, and everyone wanted Connery, so they got Connery back, even though for Diamonds Are Forever, which was a great film, but Connery was also at that point put on a little bit of weight.
Yes,
clearly older, but still way better than Lazenby.
Yeah, sure,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, but the weird thing is, there's not a lot of like photos of Lazenby, like, because basically Lazenby had to go to Golden Harvest because he had kind of blown his chance in Hollywood. And this was his only chance to kind of act and do kind of action stuff. And in Hong Kong, I mean, it's actually a good move, because think about it. In Hong Kong, you have the big fish, small pond kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So Bruce Lee came, he was the biggest fish in the small pond, right? And then used that stardom to piggyback to go to the States. At least that was the plan. And with Lazenby, it was like, okay, he had blown it out there, but now he could still be a big fish in Hong Kong, because, of course, if you have someone who played Bond acting in a local Hong Kong film, well, then for that market, he can do something really big, right? And also no one else but someone like Raymond Chow was going to hire him at that point.
Okay.
But also, yeah, I mean, like he says here, there seems to be kind of a dearth of like interactions between, or photos between Bruce and Lazenby and stuff like that. Lazenby was in Hong Kong at that time, for sure.
Yeah.
Obviously, the day of Bruce Lee's death, of which today is the
Now-
anniversary, Lazenby was supposed to meet with Bruce, and Lazenby was at Bruce Lee's funeral.
Have they met before that particular date?
Well, supposedly they did, but there's no
Yeah.
photo of them together.
There's no photo.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's an entry where they did meet.
Yeah.
They were certainly, I don't know. And maybe they had not met yet, and they were going to meet on the 20th.
Right.
But there's no photo of the two of them together, right? So yeah, it's kind of interesting, right?
Right.
But also, and why, like people always disagree with me when I'm like, yeah, I think Game of Death probably would, if Bruce Lee would have even bothered finishing it. I think Game of Death would have been a bit of a mess, because the few dialogue scenes we have are like very preachy, and every time I say this, people get upset, and it's like, bro, it's an opinion about a movie that was never made. It's like, you can disagree with me,
It's
I don't
okay.
care, but like also like people reflexively say, no, it had to have been good because Bruce Lee, everything Bruce Lee did was good, and it's every actor gets to some point. Like even Bruce, even Sylvester Stallone, after he did Rocky,
Right.
he did like one movie. I forget the name of it. I think it was even in between Rocky 1 and 2, or maybe it was between 2 and 3, where he's like such a big star, and he just made this, and it was like awful.
Talking
Because-
about the one with the woman from Golden Girls? What's the name?
No,
of
9 to 5. Are you thinking about that? No, that's Dolly Parton.
That's,
Um,
Now, hey, let's
the mother
let's,
from Golden Girls.
let's use an even better example. That we're
Estelle
all,
Getty.
Estelle
No,
Getty.
That's later. That's
Stop
later.
or my
It's-
mom will shoot.
yeah,
That's much
yeah,
later.
way
That's
later.
way
That's
later. Now
Jesus
let's use a more relevant example that we all experienced. Is Schwarzenegger's Raw Deal.
Oh,
Yeah, there was that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Also, like Last Action Hero.
Yeah.
Like people say they get to a certain level of stardom, and then they're like, yeah, this will be great. This will be great, because they're surrounded by people who are like telling them that they're great all the time. I have no doubt that if Bruce Lee had completed Game of Death, that the fight scenes were amazing. I mean, the fight scenes we do have are pretty freaking cool.
Yeah.
The Inosanto scene, amazing. The Jihan J scene, the weakest of the three, but pretty damn good.
and Kareem.
And the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar
Yeah.
fight, Jesus Christ, right? Amazing. And the spectacle of it was incredible.
The footprint.
It's also possible that Bruce would have said, okay, let's just scrap those fight scenes we made.
Mhm.
And he might have decided to reshoot the whole thing and bring Kareem Abdul-Jabbar back. And they might have just redone the whole thing, because after Enter the Dragon, they would have had a much bigger budget.
Mm.
So it's possible they would have just reshot all of it anyway, right?
What was the role that they were thinking for Lazenby?
Well, that was the thing. At the time of Bruce Lee's death, they didn't have that.
Right.
So they're basically
they're just
trying to
trying to
figure out. They're like,
figure it
oh,
out.
hey, by the way, we got
Yeah.
George Lazenby.
Yeah, let's
Let's
figure out how to get him in here.
shoehorn him in there, which is not
Some
a
kind
good
of villain,
sign.
probably.
Which is not a good sign that the movie would have done well.
They'll do what they did when his like cameo in one of the Man from U.N.C.L.E. films, and he just basically played James Bond.
Right.
So that's it. He's James Bond in Game of Death. Imagine that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
but
like, unofficially, like, but that's what
Right.
his character would have been.
Yeah, but I mean,
That's
when
too
you hear
funny.
about movies that had like, last minute recasts, after it's been shot, they had to like reshoot a bunch of stuff. They had to like suddenly put another actor in there. That's usually not a good sign. And when those films coincidentally do well, it's always like lauded as such a big deal because it shouldn't have. So that's another one of the like, okay, we have George Lazenby. Great. So let's shoehorn him into this movie, of which when we shot those first 3 fight scenes, he wasn't even a thought at that time. And so I think that would have meant that the story of Game of Death was probably going to be a bit of a mess. Probably a little bit overcomplicated, because even though we can say like Bruce's films weren't like the most cerebral in terms of like the plot, but they're simple, and an action movie just needs to be simple. You
That's
just
it.
need to know who's the good guy,
Yeah.
who's the bad guy, what are the stakes, where's the tension, where's the
Right.
conflict, and then okay, now we can go. But when you start adding in a bunch of elements and trying to layer things and make them more, interesting or whatever, then it starts to lose the plot because there are no
People
stakes.
get lost. Yeah.
People get lost, right? I think it would have been a mess. Totally happy if you guys want to argue with me in the comments. I'll be sure to give it a thumbs up. All right. So anyway, here we go. Wednesday, July 18th. Notice we're going day by day now because it's the countdown. It's the final countdown. There you go. See, and we don't get a copyright strike if we use Mikey making the music himself, right?
Genius.
Just like we won't get a copyright strike for the final countdown, nor for Bronski Beat. All right, because we successfully recreated it without having to actually play it. Okay, so Wednesday, July 18th, after a phone call with producer Cy Weintraub, not related to Fred Weintraub, right? Bruce is
Good.
willing to consider resurrecting his passion project, The Silent Flute. Oh, God. The plan is for Cy and writer Sterling Silliphant to fly out to Hong Kong on Friday so that they can spend the weekend discussing the film. According to Sterling, in the October 1980 issue of Kick Illustrated, Bruce died on the day before they were set to go on the plane. Hong Kong is 16 hours ahead of Los Angeles. In The Curse of the Dragon, 1993 documentary, James Coburn remembered Sterling telling him Bruce died this morning. So I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan, but like I'm in the minority. Like Bruce Lee fans are funny because they don't like it when you say something Bruce did was not as good as something else that he did, right? As if like everything Elvis did was as good as everything else Elvis did. Have you seen the movies Elvis made? All right, those movies are not as good as like, I don't know, his '68 comeback special, right?
Oh,
But
right.
like, people think like it's just very like binary thinking. Like, oh, you like this guy, you're a big fan of his, therefore everything they did you must like, right? I love the fight scenes in Game of Death. I think it would have been a disaster when they put it together if it was going to go that route. The Silent Flute, if you ever listen to the whole treatment for the Silent Flute, it's also like a preachy kind of mess. And by the way, they actually did finally make it with David Carradine. I think it even had a different title, Circle of Iron or something like that. So David Carradine actually, of course, like the irony, I believe is in a movie. I think it's called I never watch it because if unless it's Kill Bill, and maybe Death Race 2000. If David Carradine is in it, I will categorically not watch it. All right, because as you know, I've had two things with David Carradine as far as the Kung Fu Genius is concerned. My dad. Love my dad. He's the reason why I'm in all this stuff because he brought me Enter the Dragon on VHS one day when I was homesick from school.
Yes.
That's the Kung Fu Genius origin story. It's my dad. Shout out Manfred Richter.
Yes.
Thank you for bringing me Enter the Dragon.
Son of Manfred.
He also he would go to the video store. He would stop by the video store sometimes on the way home from work and like pick me up something, right? And of course, my dad didn't know like this Kung Fu thing from that Kung Fu thing, but he knew that his son was like getting into Kung Fu, right? So he saw that they had like the Kung Fu TV series or like the pilot episode on VHS.
Yeah.
So then he brought me like Kung Fu.
Yeah.
And I saw something like, oh, cool, Kung Fu, right?
Right.
Put the VHS in, and it's like this white guy in a bald cap. And you have to imagine, my introduction to Kung Fu was Bruce Lee.
Uh-huh.
And then, because I grew up in Jersey
Yeah.
in the 80s,
Right.
every Saturday, you had Black
Yeah.
Belt Theater. So there was like a Shaw Brothers classic. So like my second Kung
miss
Fu
Black
movie,
Belt.
my second Kung Fu movie
Right.
was Heroes of the East by Lau Ka Leung with Lau Ka Fai, Gordon Liu.
Yeah.
One of the most underrated but also best Kung Fu movies ever made.
Yeah.
So it's like Enter the Dragon, Heroes of the East, where it's like Gordon Liu fighting all the Japanese styles, and then he faces off with Yasuaki Kurata, who's the ninja at the end. And like that's what I saw. And then I see David Carradine, a guy who can barely lift his leg above his knee.
The third movie.
He can barely lift his leg above his knee. And all the fight scenes are like him just like waving his hands and shit. And I remember as a kid, and I was very open to all sorts of things as a kid.
Yeah.
And very like, I didn't like to say I didn't like things. I would always try to find the good in everything.
Where was your age again? 8, 9?
8 or 9, somewhere around there.
Uh-huh.
So basically my youngest daughter's age.
Yeah.
And I remember watching this and going, nah, this guy, he's
Yeah.
not it. And then like, you know, my dad told me, how'd you like it? And I was like, oh, it was good. It was good. Next time I want to see what other Kung Fu stuff they have there too.
Uh-huh.
And then, you know, I never wanted to tell my dad I didn't like it because like I
Yeah.
love my dad and he did everything for me. Right.
Uh,
And then, so that was my first introduction to David Carradine, was like, who the hell is this guy?
you
This guy
were like,
sucks.
what?
This guy
What
sucks.
world is this?
Right? Because a lot of people who are a little older than us, like let's say
Mm.
people who are like 5 to 10 years older than us,
Mm.
some of them missed Green Hornet, but they saw the Kung Fu TV series first, and then they saw the Bruce Lee stuff. So there's a thing called the primacy effect, which is like the first thing you see. That's the thing that really does it for you, that like affects you the most.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people who have like
Your
member berries
introduction.
and nostalgia, you know, nostalgic feelings for Carradine because it was their first introduction. But I'm sorry, David Carradine is the worst act to follow Bruce Lee and any Lau Ka Leung film.
Oh,
And I was just like, this is dog shit. That was the first strike against David Carradine, right?
Okay.
Second strike against David Carradine
yeah.
was when I was at the New York Comic-Con on the panel with him after Kill Bill came out, and he was just an absolute tool. I'm not going to bore the audience with that story. I've told it multiple times on the podcast. And so anyway, so anyway, Bruce wanted to do this silent flute thing because it was like the first project in America he was trying to make. He tried and tried and tried and tried. They even went to India scouting locations. It just fell through. And that was kind of the nail in the coffin for Bruce to go to Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
But once he started to get some traction in Hong Kong, then suddenly there was like a little bit of interest in this thing.
Came in the
I mean,
back
look,
burner.
I definitely would have loved to have seen what would have happened if Bruce Lee survived. But I think we were all done a little bit of a favor by never seeing the silent flute. When you read it, it's like it's like a 70s mushroom trip.
Yeah.
With martial arts, and not in a good way. All right. It's out there. It's in a way where you're
It
like,
would have been
this-
spacey, yeah.
it's a bit of a mess,
Huh.
right? And it definitely would have been one of those things, unlike Enter the Dragon, it would have been really dated very fast, right? So anyway, now we are at Thursday, July 19th. We are one day before. Jun Rhee, the father of American Taekwondo, mentioned that Lee told him in an overseas phone call that he quarreled with Huang Feng, a director, because Lee wanted Rhee to get top billing for what was now going to be known as English as When Taekwondo Strikes. Lee also called Rhee to tell him that he was editing, that the editing was finished and that the movie was ready to go. It should be noted that when it got released in September, Angela Mao got top billing, our girl Angela. On January 10th, 1974, she married a man who was Lo Wei's best friend, the production manager of Lee's The Big Boss. Back to 1973, Rhee remembered that he last saw Lee on July 6th when it was time to leave Hong Kong after the filming of When Taekwondo Strikes had finished. Wu Ngan appeared in that movie, the infamous butler, right? So, like I said, I love this blog post. Every once in a while, he's going to like throw in some weird, like, and this person was married to this person who knew Lo Wei. Like, he so wants Lo Wei and low waist triad connections to like factor in like, oh, Angela Mao's husband at that time, was like, was the production
not
manager.
still
of Big
her
Boss
husband,
or whatever.
right?
No.
Yeah,
They divorced. So Angela, as you know, lives here.
Yeah.
She got remarried. I think she divorced in the late 70s, early 80s.
Okay.
And believe she had a daughter with that first husband.
Got it.
And then she remarried and then has 2 sons,
Okay.
George and Thomas, who we know.
Yeah.
And cool
Cool
dudes.
dudes.
Cool dudes. Absolutely cool
Right.
dudes. So again, he's always like trying to make some tenuous connection. Like, see? I mean, look, when you're talking about a cast of characters, Bruce, Raymond, Lo Wei, Andre Morgan, Woong An, there's 10 people, all right? The Hong Kong film industry is very small. You are going to have people, this guy knew this guy, and this guy knew a triad, and this triad knew this guy, because everyone knows each other.
Okay.
All right? So it is not at all surprising that there are nonstop connections between all of these people. All right. I mean, even now in the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. Okay. I am like 2 degrees of separation from everyone on this list.
Yes.
Okay. Which would make me then 3 degrees of separation from any triad that would have been involved in Bruce Lee's death. So you see, even the Kung Fu genius is in on it, right?
Oh man.
It's always ridiculous. So
oh man.
Here we go with call-in Raymond Chow Ray again. Bruce and Ray have a vitriolic argument over the accounts of Concord Film Productions, which is the company that is 50-50 split between the two of them. Linda's second husband, Tom Bleecker, here we go.
Okay.
Claimed that the box office receipt, by the way, Tom Bleecker, we love you.
Yeah.
And we would love to do an interview with you right here on the Kung Fu Genius
yeah.
podcast. Do an interview here with us. People want to hear what you have to say. Don't be scared, homie. All right. To quote Nate Diaz. Tom Bleecker claimed that the box office receipt of Way of the Dragon was falsely inflated. All right. Which is interesting because the charge in Hong Kong was always that Raymond was saying that it did not take as much money, so he could justify why he didn't pay Bruce that much. Like, oh, it only took this much money. According to Bay Logan, he also believes that Bruce had an unrealistic expectation of how much things cost, like production, advertising. So Bruce was maybe looking at the receipts and then seeing like, well, I should be getting half of this, not realizing how much distribution costs, advertising, like all of those things have to come out of what the film made, right?
Paying the staff.
Yes. So, but according to Tom Bleecker, which of course, like everyone in Hong Kong will say one thing, Tom Bleecker will say the opposite, which is why I always want to know, and where'd you get that information from? All right. Because if Tom Bleecker knows something that these other people don't know, or that is against the normal narrative, I would love to hear it. But I want to know where that comes from. All right. This was to hide the flagrant fact that protection money was being laundered to the triads. So the receipts are falsely inflated because he has to give a portion of that to the triads. All right. Which actually doesn't make sense, because if you need to give some of the money away and you need a tax write-off, why are you going to say you made more money to then give that away and then have to pay tax on the rest, which is what you actually earned?
No.
You would say you only made this much.
Amount. Yeah.
All right. And oh man, like 80,000 of it had to go to like,
Right.
Mr. Wong on the corner over there. Oh, Mr. Wong is a marketing guy. All right. You just say what the payoff is for. You give it a reason, and there you go. You don't inflate it
to pay more.
Yeah. And then say like it made 100,000.
Yeah.
All right. But we're going to say it made 200,000. So I could give 100,000 to the triad. That doesn't make sense. All right. So this was to hide the flagrant fact that protection money was being laundered to the triads. Bruce wanted to take Ray to court. Okay. Where does that come from? I mean, like, here's the thing. Repeating a story doesn't make it true. Okay. Now I go like this. So Bruce is going to take Raymond to court openly in Hong Kong.
But
because
he's
money
never
is
filed.
Well, he was. Dre, this is July 19th. He dies the next day. So I mean, he was on his way to the.
He was on his way.
He was on his way to the lawyer. All right.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I'm just saying like it's so easy to come down to the wire and be like, oh yeah. And he was gonna. Where is that information? Now, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying, when I say when I call it into question, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying if you make
Where's
a
the
claim,
evidence?
there needs to be evidence. And if there's evidence for it, a receipt, a note, something in Bruce Lee's day timer,
Yeah.
an interview with Linda, okay, an
Mhm.
audio recording, then I'll go, oh, wow, interesting. And I will totally amend it. I have no problem. And it's not to say like, oh, score 1 for Bleecker, 0 for the Kung Fu Genius. It's not a competition. It's
Right.
just that you can
Just wanna
say
see
something.
receipts.
You can say something, and then you can repeat it, and then you can put it in a book, and then other people can repeat it, and then it can be well subscribed to, but that doesn't mean it's true.
Mm.
Like every time I talk about Bruce Lee's death, and we talked about this in the last episode, there's always, but KFG, he was going through kidney failure, right? It's like repeating something out of Bleeker's book doesn't make it true. All right. Have you read the autopsy? Have you seen the labs on his kidneys? His kidneys were clean as a whistle. All right. Now because I keep getting this
Right.
bullshit about his kidneys
Yeah.
because Tom Bleecker said it. So I went back and actually pulled this book out, The Death of Bruce Lee, which is like 400. How many pages is this
Thick
book?
one.
It's 550 pages.
Nice.
And it has everything in there because it's got everything in there. You can see all the labs and everything, the weight of his organs, everything. I read the section on his kidneys. I wish I had kidneys like Bruce.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
The only
before
thing
he
in there
died.
is that there's some congestion in his kidneys, but there's congestion in all your organs when you die acutely. That's also how they check when you died. It's based on the amount of congestion. So if you die suddenly, you will basically have congestion everywhere. all
Okay.
right? But they were like, no,
It's
I mean,
just
the
a
kidneys were fine.
reaction. Okay.
Pee was clear. He even had he had very clear pee. All right. So he didn't even have like yellow, it was good, homie. Good. All right. And so this but his kidneys, he was taking cortisone injections and his kidneys. You can keep repeating it. And look, it might be true.
Okay.
But there's no
So
evidence of it.
receipts.
But there's no evidence of it. And someone having said it and other people repeating it is not evidence. Okay. Just like when I tell Wing Chun people, you know the Moi Yim Wing Chun story?
Oh yeah.
That's the claim. That's not the evidence. People say the story and like, yeah, see, that's the story. So disprove it. No. The story is the claim.
Mm-hmm.
You need to prove that the story is true. The fact that there is a story doesn't mean shit. Okay? The fact that you said something doesn't mean shit. The story. Bruce's
Man.
kidneys. The story. Bruce on cortisone.
Yeah.
The story. The triads did it. Are the triads killing his kidneys with cortisone? Because now I'm hearing 3 different conspiracies. What is it? Is it the triads secretly giving him cortisone injections and killing his kidneys and giving him diuretics? Because at some point, what they do is they take 5 different theories, throw it on the wall, and just see what sticks. And they keep repeating it like those Roomba vacuums that get stuck in the corner and keep going. But the kidneys, but the kidneys, but the kidneys. Show me the info on his kidneys. I'm waiting. And if I'm wrong, I'll be wrong. I'm not saying it's about me being right. I'm just saying that until there's evidence, you don't have to say, but his kidneys. All right? Jesus Christ. All right. So, anyway, so Bruce is going to sue him for falsely inflating the receipts so he could give a bunch of the triads. Makes total sense. Good business choices there, Raymond.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ray.
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 Ray
And then
from the
so it
Bronx.
was Charles, not Ray, who was going to have dinner with Bruce the next day. At this juncture, I should note that he ended up being one of the cameramen for Bruce Lee, the Man, the Legend, which is the documentary that was shot after Bruce Lee's death.
Huh.
What that means, I don't know. All right.
That's
So
a
now-
nice little tidbit.
So now we come to Friday, July 20th.
No.
All right.
No.
51 years
No.
ago to this day when we're here. Now.
This is the blow.
So what if you could transport back in time for a front row seat into the life and legacy of one of the most respected Wing Chun masters in history? Gong Sao Wong, a tribute direct students on Sifu Wong Sun Leung, offers you just that. Through a series of exclusive conversations, 25 direct students share anecdotes, reflections, and personal stories offering in-depth understanding of the man behind the legend. Order your copy today across 12 Amazon marketplaces with free shipping. I absolutely love this book, and I think you'll find it an indispensable part of your collection. I can't recommend recommended enough. Get yours today. Go to Amazon, type in Gong Sao Wong, and there you go.
One thing I have to say about because in my notes here, July 20th, this is the longest entry in the whole thing.
Okay.
And it has
it's like a
timestamps, all sorts of
4
shit.
pages.
Yes, but here's the problem. All right, the exact narrative of where Bruce Lee was at 2 p.m., where he was at 1 p.m. Why was he going to Betty's? Was he having a meeting with Raymond's? Was he just going for a hookup? Was he resting before he was going to go meet Lazenby? There is not a single fact of the day of July 20th which has not been contradicted by someone else. Okay. At the inquest hearing after Bruce Lee's death, they had to have an inquest and they had to go through all the medical stuff, but then they also interviewed everyone involved to see, what was your story? They interviewed Betty, they interviewed Ray, they interviewed all the doctors, they interviewed everyone. All right, Linda.
Oh yeah.
I believe even maybe Andre Morgan, Betty, everyone.
Wow.
Okay. And then where were you at 3? Then where did you go? Then what? Then what? Then what? And some of those statements contradict statements they made earlier. Some of those statements contradict statements they made years later on video. So the problem is there's no version of this I can read that anyone who knows anything about this won't say, well, actually, no, Betty wasn't there until 2 p.m. Because the problem is every single fact in here has been countered by another fact, by another interview before, after, during the inquest, contradicted what Raymond Chow later said here, there, whatever, what the doctor said when he wasn't being interviewed, what was said in Death by Misadventure versus what was said in the inquest. So the problem is this is all very speculative in terms of so yes, I got times, I got stuff. All right. Okay. I'm going to read it without much interpolation from me because this I really don't know. Because here we are this is like the Rashomon, like the story being told by multiple different perspectives.
Okay.
And I think everyone was a little guarded with what they said. Not that there was a huge conspiracy. And before I get started, there was a conspiracy about Bruce Lee's death. Now, remember, conspiracy, all right, is not faking the moon landing. A conspiracy is when you have one or more people who conspire to commit some kind of act, usually nefarious, criminal, whatever, right? Yeah. It doesn't mean there were 100 people involved. All right, just
one or two
or more. There's got to be two to be a conspiracy.
Okay, 2 or more.
If it's just one person, it's just someone being a criminal dick. All right, but you have to have 2 people who are in cahoots, right?
Okay.
And so there was. So I'll be, and this is for sure one of the reasons why there's always been controversy about Bruce Lee's death. Because initially, both Raymond Chow and Linda Lee lied to the press. When it was clear that Bruce was dead, and then the press was starting to snoop around, the initial either press release or statement by Raymond Chow or Linda, don't remember which one, perhaps it's in here, said that Bruce had collapsed at his home at 41 Cumberland Road. I think while strolling in the garden, I don't know, I assume while holding Linda Lee's hand. It's like they so wanted to make up for the fact that no, he's at his mistress's place. It's like, no, he was at his home in the garden, holding hands with his wife. And then he felt ill. And then they inexplicably brought him to a hospital in the middle of Kowloon instead of just bringing him to Baptist University Hospital, which doesn't make any sense. All right. It's just like, anyone who's coming on the Hong Kong tour with me, I take them to Bruce Lee's mansion. I show them where Queen's Elizabeth Hospital is. Right. You can literally, I think, if you look between the buildings, you can probably see Baptist Hospital from Bruce Lee's house.
Yeah.
But no, they went all the way over here. All right. So, I mean, that doesn't make any sense. And then when you realize that Bruce then died at Betty's, which is even closer to Baptist Hospital, none of it makes sense. None of that makes sense. All right. So they initially told the press that lie because they didn't want people to know that he was at Betty's place. All right. And then from what I understand, someone, either reporter, someone just looked at the manifest of ambulances and saw where the ambulance went, because there was like a list there in the, the bay where all the ambulances are coming, and saw that the ambulance that picked up Bruce Lee picked him up at Beacon Hill Road and not on Cumberland Road. And someone said, isn't that like where Betty lives? And that's when the cat was let out of the bag. And that's when they had to begrudgingly admit that he had actually died, collapsed. What the incident occurred at Betty Ting Pei's apartment, whom the press already knew that he was having an affair with. And I think it's for that reason. And also the fact that he was 32, supposedly in the prime of his life, healthy, all that stuff. Although we know that behind the scenes that wasn't really true. But I think it's the fact that they initially lied about the place of his death.
Yeah.
And that was outed within like a day. That then everything else they were going to say after that completely lacked credibility. Dre, trust is like a sheet of paper.
Oh, yeah.
When you crumble it up, you can try to straighten it again, but it'll never be. All right. And so that's basically what happened, right? So even if everything that had come out about Bruce Lee's death was the God's honest truth,
right?
Let's say he really died from taking Equagesic, which is an aspirin with a mild sedative, which he had been taking for years. Let's say that was true. There was no way people are really going to believe it, because the first part they had lied about it, right? So, and that's where it's like, we'll see, and then obviously, and then if there was a conspiracy to hide anything about Bruce Lee's death, it was to hide the fact that he was at Betty's place. And maybe to hide one other thing. But I'll not talk about that now. So anyway, here we go. All right. It's interesting that this is his death date, given that 20th Century Fox wanted him to return to the silent flute. I don't know why that's interesting. Whatever. There's some stuff in the blog where I'm like, I don't know, is that interesting? You see the sausage of conspiracy theories where you just make connections and see, it's interesting. No, it's just a coincidence.
Keep that flute silent.
Look, yeah, exactly. Keep that flute silent. On any given day. All right, man, if I were to croak today, I know you love it when I talk about me dying. All right, that's the Cuban side, right? To give you guilt, all right? Train more, learn more from me, all right? I might die any day, right?
Jesus.
Cubans always got to give that guilt. You're gonna regret it when I'm dead, right? All right. There could be any number of coincidences about what I was about to do today or next week. Next month, I'm gonna go to Hong Kong and do this thing. Oh, and then it is, given that he was a movie star, constantly having meetings, constantly planning the future projects, stuff like this. Bruce could have died on any day in 1973, and it would be like, see, it's curious that he died on this day, which was the day that he had the fight with Lo Wei. Like, it's curious that you can, if someone is successful and busy enough, it's curious that you think that any of this shit is a coincidence. Okay, I mean, like on any given day, he's going to meet with this guy, do this guy, have a phone call about that. Oh, you see, he was going to have a phone call about finishing Game of Death, and no, they didn't want him to finish Game of Death. And had it happened like a month later, Bruce, was having a phone call about how happy he was with Enter the Dragon, and then and they decided, like, Jesus Christ, stop with this bullshit. All right. Anyway, it seems that Raymond knew damn well that Bruce was on the verge of death in Betty Ting Pei's apartment, but dragged out the time so that the ambulance wouldn't reach him in time. It's too convenient of Ray to use George Lazenby as an alibi. The excuse was that the trio were to discuss the Game of Death at the Kam Teng Chung restaurant within the Miramar Hotel, where the Fist of the Unicorn press conference was previously held. This was a droll way for Ray to exonerate himself from being involved in the matter. Now, again, that's speculation. Look, I love everything about this guy's blog except the shit that gets about Bruce Lee's death. Because he's like, see, all right. Can we let the elephant out of the room? Why did they drag their feet about getting the ambulance there to get Bruce? Because it's always like, oh, Bruce was dragging his feet and calling because he wanted Bruce to die. He wanted his cash cow to die. All right? No. You know why? Bruce was already dead, and they were figuring out, what the fuck story are we going to tell? It is not that Bruce was dead when the ambulance got there.
Right.
So it was not a matter of Raymond Chow dragging his feet so that Bruce could die. All right. Jesus Christ. All right.
Wow.
Your biggest star is dead in his mistress's apartment. You know he's dead.
Right.
He was naked in her bed. Raymond Chow put the clothes on Bruce Lee before they came because he was already dead. That's why it didn't matter what hospital he went to, as long as the hospital would not report drug intoxication to the government, as Baptist would, but Queen's Elizabeth Hospital would. He was already, guys, there's no conspiracy about Raymond dragging his feet. Bruce was dead. All right, that's it. And they're going, fuck. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
He's dead in the bedroom, and they're going, fuck. Okay. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do?
What do we say? What do we say?
It
What do we
is
say?
literally as simple as that. As simple as that.
Panic.
But
mode.
people are like, no. He wanted Bruce to be dead. He was dragging his feet. So Bruce is like in the bedroom, and Raymond's like, shut up, putting a pillow over his mouth. Shut up. All right, shut up, people. Cut that bullshit out, okay? Anyway, Andre Morgan, Golden Harvest producer, who was also in When Taekwondo Strikes, claimed that the trio had a morning meeting at his office. Lee ate hash, almost a semi-literal smoking gun. No, it's not. Again, a lot of this stuff was written before the drug letters came out. So everyone thought, it was the poison Nepalese hash. Hey, look at the toxicology reports. No, it wasn't. The amount of THC that was in Bruce Lee's system at the time of Bruce Lee's death was extremely small. Extremely small. So this acute intoxication, no. So anyway, Bruce complained of a headache and asked Andre for codeine, but he didn't have any. According to Matthew Pauly's Chasing the Dragon article for Playboy, Lee and Ray went to visit straight to Betty's home instead of Lee's house. Yeah, why the hell would he bring Betty to his house? Lee spending time at Golden Harvest on the morning of July 20th has never been in any of the official accounts. Also suspicious is that Lazenby claimed that the Japanese restaurant made his favorite food, but Junri claimed that Bruce preferred Korean cuisine. This is a bunch of conspirators. So I guess I am going to have to comment on some of this because I'm reading it out loud.
Yeah.
Reading it out loud may imply some kind of endorsement. No. George Lazenby claimed that the Japanese made his favorite food, but Junri claimed that he preferred Korean cuisine. Junri is Korean. He probably often ate Korean with Junri, and he was like, yeah, I really, really like this stuff. And Junri's like, yeah, he loves Korean food. But then to Lazenby's like, oh, this Japanese restaurant is off the hook. Oh, this is evidence that they were lying because Bruce secretly really loved Korean food. But we have receipts of Bruce regularly going to Japanese restaurants. I don't have receipts of him going to Korean restaurants in Hong Kong. Doesn't mean that Junri didn't think that, but it just means this is the conspiratorial bullshit where people want to make these connections in between, right? And this is where I'm at odds with Pop Cult Master because there's so much interjected bullshit in here where it's like, come on. Oh, they're obviously lying. Bruce really liked Korean food and not Japanese food, right? You know, when I'm in I love Hong Kong food. Yeah. I love dim sum. I love Shanghai food, Northern Chinese, Peking duck, all sorts of stuff. But when I'm in Hong Kong for about a week and a half and I've been eating like the best Chinese food every day, it's about a week and a half into every Hong Kong trip, I suddenly crave a burger. Someone's like, I'd be like, it's so great, but like, you know, I'm still American. Yeah. And luckily they have Shake Shack in Hong Kong. So I'll literally go to Shake Shack on Hong Kong Island and have a Shake Shack burger. It tastes exactly the same. It's like, all right, I have my Shake Shack. I'm good. I go back to eating. It's always the same, right? So this idea that like, no, Bruce is only going to eat one type of food. I mean, get the fuck out of here. There has been hearsay about, like you said, there has been hearsay. Bro, half your article is hearsay, all right? Yeah. Outside of the dates, most of what you put in there is hearsay about whether Bruce really did write to his attorney, Adrian Marshall, on July 20th. After all, his service was dismissed in the previous year for an unidentified reason. Considering that Adrian went on to have a decade-spanning relationship with Linda after the death, it's patently clear that the letter was a fabrication so as to make sure that she could control Bruce's estate. When talking about future plans, Cy Weintraub is mentioned in the letter, but not George Lazenby. Producer Andrew Vanya is referenced, but not the deal with Golden Harvest rival Shaw Brothers. Again, this is just some conspiracy. Literally in this same timeline, I think it was either in part 2 or part 3, Bruce got a phone call from it was from Ted. Yeah, I mean, Maybe they did fire Adrian Marshall. There
Mm.
was some talk about Linda having a relationship with him afterwards. But again, what does that mean? What was here? We don't know, because there was some speculation that perhaps Bruce and Linda's relationship was not very strong at this point for various reasons,
Okay.
mostly unidentified. I mean, we see the obvious strains, Betty and things like that. But there could have been some other things going on.
Yeah.
So there might have been some speculation about them maybe getting a divorce, and there maybe being some other. There could be something there, but the problem is, it's still just kind of taking random facts and saying "see," right? He does say it's hearsay, but still, as someone who's rereading this out loud, I have to be
Yeah.
very open
Mm.
about this being speculation. Okay, so now at 1 p.m., Bruce Lee historian Tom Bleecker. Wow, calling Tom Bleecker a Bruce Lee historian
Bruce
is,
Lee
is-
historian
is a bit of a
Tom
stretch.
Bleecker.
Claimed that this is when Linda said goodbye to Bruce so that she could have lunch with Reba Hoy. That was Sam Hoy's wife, the wife of singer named Sam Hoy. As an aside, I should point out that the 13th stroke of the clock is a phrase to indicate that the previous events must have been called into question. In this instance, Linda claimed that Bruce spent the morning of July 20th at their house, where he was dictating to his secretary in the study. In her own books, Linda claimed that she left around noon. At the inquest in September, she said 12:30. So again, we see that there's conflicting reports, which I had mentioned before. But also, what is the 13th stroke of the clock? Shut up.
Superstitious shit.
It's bullshit. Raymond Chow. Okay, so now at 2 o'clock, Raymond Chow supposedly visited Bruce's house, Crane's Nest, I guess that was the name of the house, to plan the pagoda picture. Both were alone. It's eerie that everyone was gone on the day he died, because the Lee residence usually had the hustle and bustle that you would expect if two families lived under the same roof of a house that wasn't semi-detached. It was more bustling than a Chinese restaurant. To this very day, Linda can't recount the whereabouts of Wu An and his family. A probable scenario is that on July 19th, Ray hinted about the triads not being pleased by the way which Bruce brushed them off. Seriously? Okay. I almost
Okay.
feel a little irresponsible reading this stuff here, right? But I mean, people want to hit this up. There's not, by the way, I'm reading, there's not an ounce of evidence. Oh, on one day, Wu An and his family are not there.
Hmm.
And then, oh, see, they were all gone.
It's really quiet.
It was really
Yeah.
quiet, right?
Yeah.
No one was there.
Huh.
Okay, then how come Bruce didn't die in that house?
Yeah,
They wanted to make sure his house was clear so he could die at Betty's apartment.
yeah.
This is all horse shit.
Huh.
Horse shit. Bruce should have made him a permanent partner. Instead, he went ballistic and told Ray that the triads had no sway over him. Ray informed the triads that Bruce wouldn't play ball. Really? Needless to say, they wanted his head to be dead as a form
So
of enough was enough.
this is okay. This conversation is according
is-
to Ray,
Yeah, well, no, the thing. Yeah, well, that's the thing is
because there's
no,
only them two there.
It sounds like this is according to Pop Cult Master and his powers of ESP.
So he found out.
There is no source on this information. He's just saying at 2 o'clock, this is what they talked about. F off. F off.
There's no recording of it.
Off. Jesus Christ.
This is
All right, now we're
great.
at 3 o'clock.
This is great.
According to the doorman, Bruce and Ray arrived at Beverly Heights. That's the name of the apartment complex that.
Have we been there?
No, but I took Bruce Willow there last year.
Okay.
At the inquest, Ray was asked about this, to which he heatedly denied it by explaining that they were still studying a new draft and they left for Betty's apartment somewhere between 4 and 5 p.m. So there is a discrepancy as to what time they arrived at Betty's. The doorman says it was around 3. Raymond says it was between 4 and 5. This is where I think things get a little fishy, because why is Raymond concerned with the difference of an hour? Okay.
So they arrived together, or Bruce got there first?
According to the doorman, Bruce and Ray arrived together. And that's what the doorman saying. Now, is it possible the doorman was paid to say whatever? Yes. But then why would he be paid to then contradict what Raymond would say? Doesn't make sense. So I have reason to believe the doorman was right, or saying to the best of his knowledge, which also meant that Bruce did not go there by himself. So the idea that they were there for a meeting could make sense, because the doorman is saying that the two of them came together. All right. Now, again, like I said, you could say the doorman was paid, but then why would the doorman then say something that conflicted with Raymond Chow? Because who else would be paying him? All right. Okay. Unless Betty paid the doorman to say, oh, say that Ray was there too. And then Ray didn't agree with that. And now I'm calling him Ray. And
Right.
because
we all know who Ray is.
And then there was something like that, right? So maybe
Yeah.
Betty is getting her wires crossed with Raymond. But the thing is, it's all speculation. You can't say, aha, therefore, yes. All right.
Mhm.
So now 4:00. Linda claims to miss Bruce by a hair's breadth because Ray drove him to Betty so that he could discuss the game of death. The doorman claimed that Ray left Beverly Heights at this time. So again, Linda saying that she just missed them at around 4.
At the Cumberland.
Yes. And the doorman is saying Ray was leaving at 4. So someone's not telling the truth. And I think this is part of the reason that initially they did not want people to know that Betty was there. So I think they didn't plan when they're kind of formulating the plan. Like, oh, wait, what time did we get here? I think had Raymond known that the cat was going to be out of the bag, that they were going to find out they were at Betty's, they would have been much better at securing the timeline. Because I think because they went out and said he collapsed at his Cumberland Road home. And then they found out, no, it was at Betty's. And then they were like scrambling, shit, we didn't discuss this.
Mhm.
And then so you may have Betty and Raymond telling different things just because that was not part of the original plan.
No.
Okay. What happened there from 4:00 to 7:30 would have negated the need to have a business dinner with Betty at the Kam Teng Chung restaurant. Okay. Could be 6:30. Earlier on in the hour, the plan was for Lee to meet Charles Lowe at a Japanese restaurant called Kanatanaka. But I thought he loved Korean food. Lee preferred this place because it had a private room. But I thought he liked Korean food. Junri said he liked Korean food.
Well, Korean restaurants don't have private rooms.
Right.
just so
Yeah, exactly. Lee doesn't turn up his plan, so Lowe's phones his home. Someone at the receiving end says he isn't there, and something happened. Lowe goes to the house. He sees 4 of Lee's stuntmen and his son Brandon. The latter claims in broken Cantonese that his dad is, meaning Brandon, is working on a movie. The men look so sad. One stuntman says that he doesn't think Lee will be coming back. Lowe asks which hospital is he based at. The men are really secretive, so he can't get any more info from them. He leaves and goes home. This reminds me of the scene from Game of Death where the pseudo Bruce actor is stopped by 4 corpse guards. Who cares? But you see, by 6:30, they go over there, and it seems that some stuntmen may have known that Bruce was already dead. Which is the reason why I think Bruce was dead much earlier. And they were already some whispers to some people, and they were trying to figure out how are we going to explain it? Because it wasn't a matter of saving Bruce. Bruce was dead. Okay? And it was just like, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Everyone's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, let's think of something, right? But I think that's why there's always these stories like, oh, some stunt guys knew Bruce was dead. Yeah, because I think that there were a number of hours. Not that Raymond would be telling everyone and their son, hey, by the way, Brucey's dead. We're trying to figure it out. But I think certain people had to know because they may have been necessary to be involved to help perpetuate some kind of story or something like that. And that's as conspiratorial as I will ever get. 7:30. The official story of his decay starts at this moment. Okay. Bruce complains of a headache, so he takes an aspirin. George Lazenby claimed to be at the Kam Teng Chung restaurant when Bruce called to complain about the headache. Lazenby tells him that they would cancel dinner, but Bruce insisted that he wouldn't bail out. Betty and Ray never corroborated this claim. If true, you would think that Bruce would be self-medicating while waiting for a taxi.
So he, Lazenby's at the restaurant. He gets a call from
Bruce
at the
complaining
restaurant.
about a headache.
At the restaurant at what time?
7:30. Okay. Now, so I don't know about that. I don't know whether that's true. I don't know whether they made that up later. I don't know if George Lazenby even knew Bruce's voice and they didn't put someone else on the phone.
Exactly.
Now, again, I'm not trying to say that's what happened because that would be a fucking crazy claim.
It could have been some maitre d' come over and say, hey, you just got a call from Bruce Lee.
Yeah. I have a message for you.
Yeah.
So it may not have been an actual phone
Right.
call that he had face to face. Yeah,
Right.
you're absolutely right. In any case, most of the stuff here, I don't believe any of it. And it's not like because I'm a super conspiratorial guy. It's just that
There's no receipts.
There are no receipts on any of this stuff, you know? And also you see like there seems to have been some kind of effort for George Lazenby to know at 7:30 that Bruce wasn't feeling well.
Mm.
Bruce may have been
Mm.
dead since 3 p.m.
Mm.
And they're trying to push this out a little bit. All right. So it's like, no. He hasn't been dead for 4 hours already, and we're just figuring out what to do. He's still coming. He's got a headache. Oh, look, I guess he died. So this idea of pushing out the time seems pretty clear. It's just what's not clear is exactly how and who did what and exactly when and what.
Mhm.
But it seems very clear because people made some specific statements
Yeah.
that they're trying to push what seems very clear that Bruce had been dead for multiple hours. They're trying to push this later.
Mm.
Later. 9 o'clock. Officially, Betty was awake when Bruce lapsed into a coma, sleeping peacefully, according to her. Ray called her to find out why they weren't at the Japan-themed restaurant. Japan. It's not just called a Japanese restaurant. Japan-themed restaurant, right? That's like saying I have a Chinese-themed Wing Chun school, right? Ray and Betty have a fair chance of saving his life. Either one can call an ambulance and have him transported to Baptist Hospital,
man.
where doctors familiar with his previous collapse will administer mannitol, thus relieving. Because I love how the blog writer knows exactly the medication they would give Bruce. And that's the thing, that they waited for him or whatever. I think is very clear. Bruce was dead.
Mhm.
Bruce had spent 20 minutes driving over to the Beverly Heights through a typhoon. Ray has slapped Bruce around and shaken him violently for several minutes, obviously. I'm sure that someone with a bleak streak of humor will say that it symbolizes how Ray's misconduct was a slap in... Oh, shut up. Always this kind of narrative, adding narrative to it, right?
Slap
The
in
line is
face.
busy. Okay. And then so 9:50, so almost 10 o'clock. Dr. Eugene Chu has driven over to Betty's place. 10 o'clock, after slapping and failing to resuscitate Bruce. It seems that once Bruce Lee's dead, everyone's finally trying to get their licks in. Everyone's slapping him.
Right.
And
Oh,
failing
my.
to resuscitate Bruce for several minutes when a
Makes
pulse
me
check
think
would
of
have sufficed. See, here's the thing. He says, after slapping and failing to resuscitate Bruce for several minutes, when a pulse check would have sufficed, Eugene decides to have him transported to a hospital. Baptist is just a few short blocks away. Does Eugene order Bruce rushed to Baptist? No. He has the ambulance driver transport him clear across the city to Queen Elizabeth Hospital, who weren't familiar with his medical history. The excuse is that the facilities over there are most likely to perform miracles, despite Eugene later claiming that he didn't rush Bruce to the hospital because it was obvious that he was dead. Yeah. All right. Ray calls Linda to tell her to arrive at the latter hospital. Incidentally, it is nearest to Bruce Lee's home. Yeah. And also, we know later that Queen's Elizabeth Hospital is not obligated to report a drug intoxication to the authorities.
Yes.
10:15, Linda recalled that she was at the hospital way before the ambulance arrived. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense if she had left. 41 Cumberland Road is further south than Beacon Hill Road. She is, depending on how you drive and depending on the traffic, she's 5 minutes closer to Queen's Elizabeth Hospital. But if she had already gotten going way before the ambulance even came, it makes sense why she would be there first. Beacon Hill Road is here. Cumberland Road is here. Queen's Elizabeth Hospital is here. So she's closer. It makes sense. She got there before. Over the years, people speculated that it took so long because Bruce was naked. Really? All right. Medical people care about that. All right. I have not once been to a New York City hospital where I didn't see nudity.
No.
In recent years, Betty confirmed that they did have an affair. Thanks, Betty. I'm glad you finally confirmed that.
Yeah.
It doesn't help matters that herself teaching BDSM had been conjectured as to why he had experienced submucosal hemorrhages in his rectum. Yeah, I read the autopsy report that's in there. I don't think that has anything to do with that. In fact, that also seems to be a kind of normal thing that happens on certain drug intoxications.
Wait. Was that just intimated that she pegged him?
Yes. Well, Pop Cult Master intimated that because of
Right.
some of a one-line note in the autopsy, which even when it's in the autopsy, was not noted as being weird or like not normal. But he makes it a thing. All right, he does, as we say in New York, he makes it awkward for no reason. He did say that he was receiving a revelation of cleverness from her during the time frame of The Way of the Dragon. What does that mean? I can't imagine him subjecting himself to autoerotic asphyxiation like this. Shut the fuck up. The fuck is this guy even talking about? Stick to the facts. You ever see Dragnet? Just the facts?
Just the facts.
Please.
It's interesting as we've gone through all 4 of these episodes that now at the end,
Yes.
This is
Like,
the first time I'm ever hearing of any of this.
Because when it comes to Bruce Lee fandom, especially in the Hong Kong years, you have a lot of newspapers, and you can get a lot of like, on this day he had this press conference, and then here they started shooting here. But when you get closer to his death, even someone who seems to be relatively level-headed, like the writer of this blog, people lose their fucking minds around Bruce Lee's death, and they're it's like a bit of some kind of narcissism to be the one that says, "I figured it out." As I say, and I'm like, I'm pretty confident I know why Bruce Lee died, but I'm also totally willing to be shown evidence contrary to what I know. Like if someone dropped something in front of me that made me feel that I was wrong about what I've been saying for the last year, I would be like, okay, makes sense. I don't have to be the one, and I'm still not fully talking about what I learned last year. But these guys go like, it's that it's always sunny in Philadelphia meme.
Yeah.
Where it's like, and it's that easy. Like all the connections, like stop, guys. All right, so we're at 11:30. Ray announces to the press that Bruce is dead. 11:30, by the way, is actually the stamped time of death on Bruce's death certificate. All right. Traces of cannabis were still in his stomach and small intestine, but the operative word there is trace. I went through all this stuff this morning in preparation for today's episode. Really small. And in fact, they kind of, to a certain degree, wanted to say, like, maybe it was the cannabis that did it, even though that would have been problematic for his insurance. And at that time, when they were like very like, and like, oh, yeah, cannabis on reefer, that'll kill you, right? All the medical letters that they got like from, I think, U.S. Military hospital had looked at that stuff. They were like, it was funny because even back then, they're like, we have no cases of people dying from cannabis.
Yeah.
And like, we looked through all the literature and consider it one of the safest of all the illicit drugs. And they're like, there is no literature to support that there is some kind of thing as a cannabis intoxication. And certainly not at the extreme low levels that were present in Bruce's system. So it seems that even trying to like, pardon the pun, peg that onto the cannabis is a bit of a stretch.
Fail.
Yeah. So, he got it. He got it. All right. So anyway, this means that not much time has gone by when he consumed it to when he died. When duly noting the similarities of ganja ingestion and cerebral edema to the May 10th collapse, Bay Logan had paraphrased Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's catchphrase from the 2002 interview with the Divine Wind: "When you have eliminated all which is possible and whatever remains, however improbable must be the truth." Funny that they're quoting Bay Logan there. Bay Logan, for the longest time, thought that there was some kind of tainted cannabis. And I'm friends with Bay, and I talked to him for many years, and I believe that based on what I found out last year, I've actually swayed Bay to my hypothesis, which shall remain non-discussed. So there you go. So we have the last bit here was that Patrick Wong Sayuk, a photographer, was disallowed to snap anything in the morgue other than Bruce's head or the Kam Ye Pao newspaper. As you know, there is that photo of Bruce's head in the morgue.
Yeah.
The story was that he tried to get a photo of Bruce's junk because there was a rumor that Bruce died while erect. And no, that was a legit rumor in Hong Kong at the time. Looked into it. If you had an erection at the time of death, it would go away. You wouldn't stay erect at the time of death. It would
so
like
strange if it would.
But they would, like, people said, because people were trying to make fun
How
of
do you
Bruce.
close the casket?
Exactly, right? And then you really see the reason why he was named Three-Leg Lee. No, that was total bullshit.
Right.
That was total bullshit.
Man,
And there was just some sensationalistic nonsense about that. But yeah, supposedly he wanted to snap that photo, and then like the nurse, no, you can only get a photo of his face.
Uh-huh.
That photo is available online for people who are into the, I mean, I've seen it, everyone's seen it,
Right.
into the macabre. For a while, I actually thought there was something fishy about that photo. Not that
Yeah.
the photo was faked, but when you look at it, Bruce's neck
Mhm.
is completely swollen
Yeah.
and up like this. And then you go like, oh my God, it looks like obvious trauma.
Well,
Un-
everyone was slapping him before.
yeah, exactly. Everyone was slapping
Yeah.
his corpse at
It's
the time,
swollen,
right?
Yeah.
Until you find out, you know how they do the autopsy, they got to get all the organs and stuff out of you, right?
Yeah.
You know how they do that, right?
Oh.
They cut you up the back. And they have to take the brain out, because if you're going to be in a casket, they're not going to take the brain out from the front.
Yeah.
So what
it's
happens
like-
is they basically split you from the back, and they take everything out the back, because that's the side that's facing down. And so what happens is all of that stuff is taken out. So now there's
Mm.
the stuff is literally taken out of his body. And that is the reason. And I had a medical doctor explain it to me when I was like, you know, it was like in my earlier conspiratorial days, I showed it to a doctor. I'm like, see, he had obvious trauma. And he looked at it. He said, no, in the autopsy, when they cut it, like, that's literally what happens.
That's what
Because they're cutting all your
happens.
stuff out the back. And that's also the reason why in the open casket, when Bruce had it, they put a shroud on his face, was to hide that his neck was like that, because that was a result of how they did the autopsy.
Oh.
It wasn't a result of any kind of trauma or anything like that. Bruce's autopsy had no signs of trauma, no bruising, no cuts, no poisons, and none of that kind of stuff. There is some kidneys were clear for all you Tom Glee go, what is
Kidney,
kidneys?
Clear
But
kidney.
I will read something
Oh.
here that I'm just going to leave people with. This was a letter to Dr. R.R. Lysette, who's one of the guys, I believe, who also did the autopsy, along with Dr. Langford, which is also a little strange that, you know, Dr. Langford was involved in that, because he was kind of a general practitioner. Dr. Lysette, dear Dr. Lysette, and this is dated 30th of August, 1973. So it's already a little over a month after Bruce's death. And this is from the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology. So it looks like, to get a second opinion, they sent this stuff over there, right? Dear Dr. Lysette, this letter confirms the telegram sent to you on the 29th of August and provides further information in reply to your letter and telegram addressed to the attention of Captain Charles J. Stahl, MC, U.S.A, Chief Forensic Sciences Division, on 13th of August and 29th August, 1973, respectively. Dr. Stahl had been away on annual leave when your letter was received. The information provided in your letter concerning the case of this 32-year-old man, name unknown, they sent it without saying who it was, because they didn't want any, like, they sent the labs without saying who it is. All right? So no one, they didn't know it was Bruce Lee. Okay? 32-year-old man, name unknown, AFIP unaccessioned, has been reviewed. And here we go. So these are people who didn't know who it was. All right? And this was the initial finding, which is at odds with what the final finding was, which they later reworked to say was the Equigese. So consider this, an independent lab who didn't know that this was Bruce Lee was given tissue samples, given this stuff, and asked, and this is a highly esteemed Armed Forces in America pathology lab. Okay. Although the clinical and post-mortem findings are suggestive of drug intoxication, the results of the toxicology distribution studies show only low concentrations of ethohepazine, meprobamate, and salicylic acid. Because the one thing that they would need to test for that may have been the drug intoxication, by the time the labs got to New Zealand, which was then later sent here to the States, the window of time for that stuff to dissolve in a very specific substance would have passed. It, especially at this time, the screening system, because I become the researcher on a certain substance since it came out. Every time I Google this stuff, by the way, if you ever have to Google certain types of drugs for finding information, the first things that come up on Google are like, are you in crisis? Call this number. And it's like all these different crisis lines. I'm like, shit, Google thinks I have like a massive problem because I'm always searching a certain substance. Nowadays, the ability to test for these things is much better. Don't forget, this is 51 years ago.
Yes. To the day.
Nowadays, they still have some issues with a certain substance because it clears the system, including in dead bodies, relatively quickly.
This is why it's so good when you shouldn't do marijuana when you work, because that doesn't clear the system very quickly. But if you
other
get
things
drug
do.
Other things do.
And
I don't
and
know.
in a number of tests, and I've read studies, PubMed studies, about them testing for certain substances in bodies. And sometimes like 25% of them, even with modern methods, a certain substance comes up as undetected after a certain window. And that's now. But back then, no way. So they seem to say, well, there was cannabis in there, so maybe that was it. But the substance that was most likely, because they looked at it and they said it's drug intoxication. But the drugs that he had in there don't seem to be anything that would kill him.
Trace.
Because perhaps the drug that would have done it was past its window to be detected. And that's all I got to say about that. All right, everyone. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Kung Fu Genius. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the Kung Fu Genius. Hit that bell for notifications. Let me know if you like this kind of content. And support us on Patreon. Support us here on YouTube. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.
Word is I'm a kung fu genius. Technique speaks for me, not lineage. Forget Jet Li, cause I'm the one. Many call me seafood, but to you I'm sea gung. And I produce masters. You surpassed us. Your kung fu stiffer than corpse and caskets. City Wing Chun is the house I built. Violate the gate and your blood gets spilt. Alex, Richter, always the victor.
All right, everyone. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Kung Fu Genius. As always, don't forget to subscribe. Okay. Son of a bitch. Okay.
All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be finalizing. The genius will be discussing. All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be. All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be discussing part 4 of the final months of Bruce Lee. Lots of gems, lots of George Lazenby, lots of, hey, Ray.
You called him Ray, that's why.
Hey, Ray. All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius... Oh, wait. Part 4. How'd you say it? Part 4 of... All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, we are at part 4 of the final months of Bruce Lee. Lots of gems. Lots of George Lazenby. Okay. I get excited over it. The best Bond. All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius. All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius. Wow. All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, we are at the 4th. 4th. Let the 4th be with you. 4th. All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, I got too loud with that one. All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, we are at part 4 of the final months of Bruce Lee. Lots of gems, lots of George Lazenby, lots of... Hey, Ray, are you inflating? Are you inflating?
It's just like a Bond villain.
Yeah.
He's inflating.
Yeah. And then you see Ray there going...
Waiting.
It's the end of Live and Let Die when Roger Moore puts the compressed air capsule into Yaphet Kotto.
Yeah.
And he blows up.
Yeah. I love
Ray Chow.
That was wild.
Well done.
All right, man.
Well done.
Only took us 2 hours to get there. But
Yes.
thank you. There you go.
10 take Terry.
10 take Terry.